Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Socially Distant Tea Time. I'm Caitlin McGrayus, and here I'm joined with Laura Otten and Evelyn Page, both licensed clinical social workers, got it, and maternal mental health specialists. And both of them have their services listed on Be Her Village, so you'll be able to add their amazing services to your gift registry once we're up and running. Our Socially Distant Tea Time started out of a necessity for people who were stuck in their homes.
Including us.
Including us. It basically, if you really want to know the story, it was that I was like, oh, how do I deal with all this? Let me reach out to my favorite therapist and we'll have a little segment where Caitlin freaks out and the therapist talk her down. So it's a little bit like live therapy, a little bit of fun. And it's been going on for quite a few weeks now. So I have no idea what week we're up to, but what's going on? What are you guys seeing? How are your lives? What's the mood? Or do you want me to start?
I mean, don't we, the theme is so clear this week, at least for me and the people I'm working with, is just like, everything's opening up. I can no longer okay, this is the mandate. I'm staying in, no contact. Now there are guidelines, but everyone knows people who are on the full spectrum, like people who haven't changed at all and are still very strict and isolated, and then people who are like, done, over this, play dates, beach, socialization, no masks, everything's fine. And the moms I'm working with and the pregnant women I'm working with and myself, we're trying to navigate where's the in-between and how do I lessen my anxiety about this. We're scared of screwing up.
I think that's very similar for me. And yeah, just kind of navigating like what I'm comfortable with. And I will completely say like we are still very much isolated. Haven't really seen anybody. We had a very, very distant gathering. So like physically distant gathering this past weekend. But I know I was still very anxious about it. So right now for us, like as much as I want to go out and be out and kind of get back to like normal, whatever that means now, I still feel a lot of anxiety like when we go out. So right now for our family, we're okay with kind of staying still in kind of our bubble. We're kind of and there's a lot of factors that go into that for us. Like, you know, we have parents that have a lot of health issues, so we don't want to be exposed too much. But I think it's hard now, especially with the weather being nicer and trying to figure out what does that look like for you and your family. You know, what's okay, what's not okay, and like what's your level of risk. I think we've kind of said that in other weeks too. Of, you know, what and what's okay for me, and you know, what is somebody else doing, and am I okay with that? And all of those like hard conversations that are starting to happen or not happen, and we keep avoiding them because we don't want to like hurt anybody's feelings.
For that. So last week, this is how life goes for me, right? So last week, Laura said, you know, somebody will say something and you'll be uncomfortable with it. And I said, there's no way I'm uncomfortable with everything. Let's open, you know, and not that we should open, but I've just been, of the people in my life, I think we already had coronavirus in our house, and I look at the numbers and Nassau County has almost no cases. It's just, I'm very pragmatic about it in some ways. And then my husband started trying to make plans with friends from Queens and family members that live in Queens. Oh, hello. Okay, parents. I love it. I love that. I was like, oh, Laura, she's
yeah, my husband had to go into work today, so I've also got a sleeping toddler that could, you know, set off anytime. But yeah, she made an entrance during an intake yesterday, completely naked. So that's fun to meet someone and here's my naked 4-year-old. But it was a good discussion of like, I'm a mom, I'm a real person, and here is my life too. And I could hear my toddler tantruming downstairs, and yeah,
and Laura, I would imagine, I mean, I know that there's like, because I have it, that urge to like be professional all the time. I mean, my kids are like at the park with my husband, and if I like span to my house and like the mess is literally, I don't know, that part's not that messy, but like It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. And so that's why I sit in front of the fireplace, because it's the only place that's a
Look
little
how,
bit
look how
untouched.
pretty this is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But because it's hard to mess up the fireplace. But I would imagine that like your children and your being a working mom and your experience as a mother is exactly why people are hiring you and wow, because you're living it. So
Yeah, I'm sorry, but this is a little bit of a segue, but yeah, and I think and Evelyn feels the same way. Like we couldn't do this work without having been being moms ourselves, and it's helped me be a better mom, and I do practice what I preach. I do so many of the things. I talk to my moms and teach my moms what to do, but that doesn't mean like your kids are going tantrum, you're going to fight with your partner, have disagreements, you're going to have bad days, no matter how perfectly you implement these evidence-based practices. So it'll make everything better, but life is still life. And so I also get how hard it is and things don't go to plan and stuff like that. So yes, relatable. I am a real person.
yeah.
All right, so sorry, I interrupted you. But Evelyn, you agree?
No, I totally agree. I think there's something really, I think there's, I mean, people come to therapy and there's all these, and this is kind of my perspective as a therapist, but I know we're kind of taught to like have these boundaries and, we don't talk about ourselves. Like it's focused on the client, which it should be. But I think we also have to realize like we're all human, we're all like people. And yeah, I think as a mom, like looking for a therapist, you want somebody that you can relate to. So on some level, I do share with my clients that I have small kids at home, and particularly now during quarantine, they might hear something in the background, or you have a little visitor come in. But it is kind of real life, and I think that kind of normalizes, because exactly like you said, Laura, we try to practice all of these things that we talk to clients about, but it doesn't mean that our lives are perfect or run smoothly. Or my toddler my 4-year-old had a tantrum just the other weekend. It was like one of those like epic meltdowns that I was like, I don't even know who this kid is anymore. And then you just deal with it and you keep going, because that is kind of what our lives are for.
Yeah, it's really hard though. I think there is this feeling, I think it probably existed beforehand, but I don't know. I wasn't a mother without social media, but there's definitely this like image of the perfect mother and a lot of comparison and a lot of judgment. And I was somebody who judged a whole lot, especially before I became a mom. I like definitely knew exactly how to be a mom, and I would judge moms. And then I got hit with like the truck that was motherhood, and I was like, oh, okay, a little more empathy.
You're a perfect mom until you become a mom.
Right.
And then you're just like, okay, this is really, really, really hard. And I think in my doula work, I saw that, but also in my own journey, it's really hard. And I don't say that to scare people, but it's just so hard. And so every mother that I know anyway is just literally doing the best that they can. And the best that they can looks different for everybody. For some people, that looks like a lot of screen time so that they can take care of themselves or they can work and pay the bills. And for other people, that looks like super gentle parenting and organic foods and, some sort of perfection. But nobody is perfect at all. And I think it's really something we need to talk about more, because you get other people's best version of themselves, and then you experience all the different layers and things that are going on for yourself and in your own family. And there's quite a mismatch there. And so I think the more honest conversations we can have, and the more, we're recording a show and kids come in and it's not the end of the world. And I think in some ways quarantine has been good for that, because working mothers everywhere don't have to pretend anymore, because we don't have childcare. But you know what? A lot of us didn't have childcare before quarantine. We just had this like, please go eat Cheerios in the corner and please be quiet for a half hour so I can pretend to be a professional. But you know what? I can be a professional and have kids in the same room. And sometimes my daughter sits on my lap during my Zoom calls, because it's just, we're all parents and and I think I'm hoping, I don't know, because I think we're all in the same field of like maternity and parenthood and helping new moms, but I'm hoping that that's also the case for women working in roles where they're not working with other moms, but they're just, everybody's home with children, and this is kind of the new normal for a little while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm hoping as it comes to the forefront and it's recognized, especially for fathers who they can become a father and work may never even have to know about it, right? It can really be hidden in secret. And for partners and for fathers to speak up and say, no, I can't because we don't have childcare. And so I have to watch the kids during that time, or the kid's going to join me on Zoom, and making it more visible. Because it's unrealistic what we have right now. And so many segments could be spent talking and have been spent talking about the lack of paid family leave and lack of support for that invisible childcare, invisible elder care that often lands on women. And that plays into the pandemic right now. So like Evelyn, you mentioned, like you all staying very isolated, but the day that your husband has to go into work and you have clients,
Mm-hmm.
dynamic. So, and working with the women I'm working with, it's going to look different for each person because we're all in these different situations. And we have to consider what's the risk of the isolation. Where are the negatives of the isolation? And Evelyn, you could list them all out, mental health and emotional health.
Evelyn, tell us all the things that are going on for you right now.
Please tell us how hard it is
all your
for
problems.
Yeah, no, it's hard. Like I said, like I'm like desperate to go see my friends and family. I just know right now, I know part of it's me and the anxiety of going out and what if somebody gets sick. Part of it's like I don't want to expose myself and then potentially get somebody else, close family member sick or, immune compromised essentially. But yeah, it does take its toll. I think like we were talking about earlier, there's, you get on each other's nerves, like, your partner's nerves, like kids, like the kids are bored, like they're kind of tired of seeing the same space. And like, we're lucky that we actually live on a pretty decent sized property in the woods and they can run around, but it's kind of like how many times do you run around the same trees, and kind of dig in the same holes, like it's tiring. So I think they're feeling it. We've kind of fallen into that routine, like we eat like the same things over and over again, and I love to cook. That is something that I do as like self-care, and I make all kinds of recipes, and I have found myself doing that less and less, and I think I've done other things that are helpful for me, but cooking is one of the things that it's kind of dropped off for me, kind of not had that like inspiration, but and because I like to cook for people too, so obviously if I don't have people coming over, I'm not going to make food for 50 people if it's just the four of us, so yeah, so it's there is a sort of a cost to the isolation piece as well, and I don't know, I mean my husband will have to go into work eventually, and then we're kind of coming up with our contingency plans as far as what we do with childcare, because I don't want to stop working. But I think it highlights kind of, all the things we're kind of lacking in our country, in our society, because my husband is definitely like sort of championing that at his job too. Just, he has staff that have kids and they can't just tell one parent to come in to work because the other parent is usually working, as both parents are working. So who watches the kids if you're not ready, or if you don't have access to send them to daycare or summer camp or whatever right now? So it's a problem, it's a problem that often falls on the woman, the wife.
That's what I want to know, Evelyn, is that my sister-in-law, why am I sounding so abrasive? More than usual. She texted me and she said, I'm really stressed out about what the fall is going to look like. And I'm like a little bit stressed out about it because my husband's a teacher. So I wonder what that will look like. But my job is infinitely flexible and I won't have to give it up in order to make whatever the situation is work. But in two-parent working households, the vast majority of them, the woman is the one that's going to have to flex or take on more of the burden or give something up. The vast majority. Definitely there are women who are the breadwinners, but it's just the truth that because of the lack of maternity leave and the choices women are leaving. I mean, before the pandemic, women were leaving the workforce at much higher rates than men. When my sister-in-law got pregnant with her second, my brother got congratulated for having another baby, and her boss, she was in this high-powered finance position, and her boss said, "How are you going to handle that?" That was the response. A female boss said that to her, and it's like, and she was crushed and angry and frustrated, and I was crushed and angry and frustrated for her, because it's like the burden just falls on women. And so now that we have the pandemic and all of these new pressures on us, it's going to fall on women. And there's no, there's no easy, let's talk about it for 15 minutes and we'll find a solution, or like, there's no easy answer. It's huge systemic structural changes that have to happen, where we have to recognize the value of women's work and wisdom and time and contributions, and we need to value that type of work. And I mean, this is the thing that gets me through watching the news and seeing the peaceful protesters getting mowed down and all of the violence against people. It's like the thing that gets me through watching that is maybe there will be real change. Maybe, and it's starting to happen, right? Like, people are reimagining what policing looks like. People are reimagining what budgets look like. People are reimagining waking up to racism and change that needs to happen. And I'm hoping that there will be more change in not just that arena. And I'm not trying to, oh my goodness, I'm not trying to like, oh, that's happening, look at us over here too. But I'm really hoping that this time, this really, 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 really difficult time, as a country and as a world and as a civilization and as a human race, we will just wake up and make significant changes. And I recognize how hopeful that really is, and maybe not based in evidence and based in reality, but there's so much pain out there right now, and there's so much stress, and I really hope that this can be like a spark to really make some real changes in lots of different areas.
I think it's hope that does carry us through a lot. There is so much going on in the world right now, and I do think that hearing everything on the news with Black Lives Matter and the movement going forward, I think there is a lot of space for people to be thinking about, not just, the institutionalized racism that exists in this country, but all the other things that are wrong with the system, like all the things that, we could improve, that we can change. I think people are a lot more hopeful, and I think people are, and it might be because people have more time on their hands because they're at home and they're not everybody's going out to work. But there's energy there, and I think hope is kind of carrying a lot of people through. I think it's important to have hope. It's also why I named the daughter I lost Hope, because I'm always going to have her. You always have to have hope, even in really, really difficult times.
I think part of it for me is the idea that, oh, I don't like that feedback, that's awful, is the idea that that you, in order to recognize the movement and the Black Lives Matter and all the things that they're saying and the things that have existed forever, but now at least as a white woman, I'm waking up to now. I think if you start to recognize the issues, which is literally step one, just acknowledging that it exists, and like, depending on who I'm talking to, like, we're talking about like structural changes and budgets, and other people, it's like, no, like, racism is still a thing, we need to talk about it. But once you start waking up to that, and I'm still very much in the process of doing that, you have to realize that there's a system that supported that. Like, it's not one-off things, and like, what system benefited. And when you start seeing, it's not just about race, it's about class, it's about finance, it's about capital, it's about misogyny. It's like all of those things are connected. And so I guess my hope is important, is just that they're all pieces of the same puzzle. And so if there's this uprising and this awakening, especially with the younger generation, they're really my hope, not so much my peers at this point. that they'll wake up to all of it, and they'll reimagine what the world should look like. And it feels like that. It feels hopeful. It feels like they're talking about starting from scratch and rebuilding. And just to like turn this back to parenthood, I think that concept of like starting from scratch and rebuilding is what is both amazing and powerful and exciting about being a mom and being somebody's whole world, and also what is anxiety inducing and so much pressure on me because I look at these kids and I'm like so happy, sorry for cursing, that I get a chance to make this world better, that I get to shape these little minds, that I get to help them be better people, and I help, not better people, but better people than I am, but at the same time, I'm not perfect, and I am struggling with my own issues and my own patterns and my own behaviors. I'm still trying to change, and are not even trying to change. Like, some of those patterns and behaviors are just being discovered like on a personal level. I'm just waking up to my own dysfunction right now, and I've like already imprinted that dysfunction onto an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. I'm like, oh, that's an incredible amount of pressure to like form these little people,
Yeah. So remember to like, yes, okay, so change starts with awareness. We do that in therapy. Like, you can't change a thought or behavior or feeling without becoming aware of it first. So we're in that awareness stage right now and moving towards change. But as far as being a parent, if we're never upset, if we're never sad, if we're never mad, if we never have quirks or issues or problems, then how do we model to our kids how to have those feelings and how to manage those problems and how to learn from them? So it's a wonderful opportunity that when we lose our temper or we're weird about something or something goes off or whatever it is, exploring that and growing from it to model how to do that with our kids, rather than being this weird Stepford mom of perfection, doesn't teach anything and doesn't allow the child to have his or her own range of emotions and problems and issues. And so I'll say that to parents, like, if you had the perfect life and the perfect child who never threw a tantrum, like, something would be wrong. Like, that's dysfunctional. Your child needs to tantrum in order to learn unconditional love and to learn how to manage emotions. It's healthy. Can we give ourselves the same kindness of, I'm allowed to have this, I'm allowed to have issues, I'm allowed to have a range of emotions, and then in turn too, I need and deserve support and love and growth behind it. Yeah. So good for you, Caitlin, to have issues and not be
feel good, Laura.
But what a chance to grow. If you're not uncomfortable, then you're probably not growing. Like, again with therapy, if every session my client feels like they're not being challenged and they're just sailing through and chit-chatting, I'm not doing my job. She or he needs to feel uncomfortable, needs to be challenged, needs to be pushed.
We have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
that's a lot of therapy.
Yep. Same thing with parenthood, motherhood, or whatever your journey is. And I know we only have a few minutes left. I wanted to touch on your story about C-sections this past week, Caitlin. So I'm going to change topic abruptly. But I was thinking of you because you shared about having a C-section and then a VBAC. I attended a talk last night through the Nesting Place on C-sections and scar tissues, and was just reminded again, because it's not the first time, but I definitely learned a lot of what a huge surgery C-sections are and the trauma behind it. And we're talking here about moms and kind of the punishment of becoming a mom. And one of them, when you get a C-section, is, no physical therapy. I'd argue, and I think I would hear a lot of agreement, that you don't even get rest, right? Like, there's no rest. And in the worst cases, you're doing everything yourself. Hopefully you have some help, but you're not getting the rest that you would need after a major surgery. So talk about unseen, untalked about, unsupported. And so I'm so glad you shared your story about that some. And I know I learned a lot from that too.
Yeah, so I shared it because my anniversary of my VBAC which is my son's birthday, was 2 days ago. And, every year it's like, it might as well be, I gave birth the day before. It all comes flooding back. But what came flooding back this year was the C-section, like which is now, that anniversary is in a couple of weeks. And it's like, part of what was really special is I posted a few things. I haven't been very active on Instagram and Facebook, but I posted some stuff and I shared a little bit about my experience, and C-section moms that I don't know were reaching out to me. I ended up on the phone with them. I ended up messaging with them and just sharing my story. And they were so validated. And so it was like talking to myself 7 years ago or 8 years ago. It was kind of an incredible thing. And my C-section and that jarring, talk about like a jarring entrance into motherhood. I didn't plan on having a C-section. I didn't plan on breastfeeding being really hard. I didn't plan on being in the hospital on night 2 by myself. Husbands weren't allowed. My mother was exhausted. I sent her home, not able to get up out of the bed to get my baby because I was in so much pain, not able to breastfeed. There was no paternity leave. My husband couldn't take a day off work. I mean, it was awful. And my first year as a parent was really hard. And I didn't know how hard it was. I don't even think I took a breath until I had my second, that I was like, oh, this is so much easier. I was so scared going into my second's birth because of how hard the first one was. I was so scared, not of the birth, but of the aftermath. I was afraid of that first month of life where I was just drowning. But that's what drove my doula work. That's what made me become a doula, because nobody should have to go through what I went through. And I say that not trying to be dramatic, but like, everybody goes through. It's not like I went through a big, like an unusual thing. I went through a trauma, and I went through a really difficult and very unnecessary thing. And I was put through the system, and I was educated and outspoken and hired midwives and took hypno babies. And I did what I should have done, but I still got totally like hit by the truck that is the American medical system. And I have met hundreds of mothers that have had the exact same experience as me. And that is awful and preventable and infuriating, because it's not, for me and for all of them, it's not about how the baby comes out. I could have had a beautiful, and I have supported beautiful cesareans where they're shaking hands with their doctor and going over their list and taking pictures in the OR and supported by their doula and their partner and doing skin to skin. And it's all like in their power and in their control. And the way that women birth these days and their entrance into motherhood, it matters. And it matters because that day matters. And then that day has implications for every single day after that, for the rest of your life. And so, yeah, I don't have any like beautiful ending to this. It's just like, it's literally the thing that fuels my work. It's the reason I created Be Her Village, because I could only reach 30 to 50 women a year, doing doula work. And I loved doula work, but it's not enough. 50 women a year is not enough. I need to reach more, and I need to connect women with doulas, and it needs to become the standard that people are sitting in a room with both of you, and that people are getting childbirth education beforehand, and that people have somebody taking care of them. And somebody just has to think about the mothers, because I was not thought of. And it wasn't because the people in my life didn't love me. It wasn't because I didn't prepare the right way. It's because the system is not set up for it. I got, this is like the most ridiculous thing, but at my baby shower, and I'm not ungrateful, I got a thing. This is the thing that sticks out for me. I got a thing that's like a blow up little poofy thing that goes over the nozzle. If you're taking a bath, like in a bathtub, like the nozzle sticks out, a poofy blow up. It's like a little life raft for that nozzle.
So I have a whale.
Yeah, so that the baby doesn't hit their head on that. I got that as a baby shower gift. Really grateful. Really grateful for like the love, and that someone thought of me and someone came and somebody bought me a gift. But I really could have used actual support and not a blow up thing, like some thing that probably costs $20 and probably costs 50 cents to make in China, and somebody bought me like with love. And thank God, it's like many years ago, nobody knows. Probably somebody's watching this going, I bought her that. She's so ungrateful. But like, that's not what moms need. We need people that are professionals and people who are not professionals loving us and supporting us. So yeah, my VBAC anniversary definitely stirred up a whole bunch of stuff for me. That's for sure.
Well, I'm glad you shared it, and Evelyn, you're probably the same way. So many of the moms I work with had unplanned emergency C-sections, and like you said, there are beautiful C-sections out there, and then there are really traumatizing vaginal births. You know, we know that,
it's not about how the baby comes out. It's about how the mother is treated.
It's the experience, it's the feeling, the loss of control, the lack of validation, the lack of people listening, things like that. And Evelyn and I are here to do that repair work, and we can't change the factual of what happened, but changing how we perceive ourselves having gone through it, from victim to survivor, and one of weakness and loss of control to strength and lessons learned and growth from it. So I do encourage, you know, the talk was informative, and because I do work with so many moms who have gone through that. So if you're listening to this and this is you, you're not alone in that. That's why I'm glad you shared your story, Caitlin. And that
I wish that the person who has the C-section and had a terrible birth was alone. So that means everybody else had a great birth. But unfortunately, I think there's more people that have trauma with their first birth, whether it's a vaginal birth or a C-section. I think there's so many people that trust their medical system and trust that the systems in place, that the baby shower celebration and the medical team and the postpartum care is enough. And the standard care that we have in this country is just not enough.
Right. I think there's so much there's so much birth trauma that exists. Like, it's just, I don't know if I've ever spoken to a mom in my practice that wouldn't describe her birth as traumatic in some way, you know, and the trauma is like what you perceive. And it's all of those things. Like, if you feel supported, like regardless of what happens, and people are working together to support mom, that is just such a big difference versus these sort of, and I always say emergency C-sections, because, you know, a true emergency, I feel like is actually few and far between, you know, and I'm not a medical person, so, you know, but I have over the years now, and kind of talking to so many moms, it's like, you know, you just question, like, was that really an emergency? So it's also, I mean, I've had this thought, I've shared this with Laura, like, I'm kind of working on coming up with a program around just dealing with birth trauma and having moms like be able to go through it, because as one mom described to me, she's like, my birth happened to me. I wasn't like a participant in it. And she doesn't want that to be her story. So she wants to be able to take ownership of it. And I would want every mom to kind of feel like, you know, they were an active participant in their birth and delivering their baby.
Yeah.
So
sounds like actually like doula support is the precursor, right? Like, you're saying things that me and Kathy, I mean, I was your doula, so you know, like these are the things that doulas do on the beforehand. We're trying to tell people, hey, this is what you need and this is why. And then the women who don't have that and end up in your office, because you have to deal with that, whether it's beforehand or during or after. People ask me sometimes, like, which is worse, the C-section or the vaginal birth? And I just say, you know what? And it's a little bit like this. There's pain and there's recovery and there's healing with all of them. You know, for a C-section, it's after the birth. And with a vaginal birth, it's mostly before. It's the labor. But they're both really hard and they're both valid ways to give birth. But you got to do the work.
And there was the first meeting last week, the positive birth experience for Long Island is starting up. So, and whether you're pregnant or postpartum or in the birth work world, joining that to, again, talk about positive birth experiences. And if you didn't have a positive birth, the healing from that. And if you want to have another child, maybe how to best set up a situation where you would have that.
Right. So. That's great. Well, thank you, ladies. I so appreciate our sessions, and catch us next week for Socially Distant Tea Time.
Thank you.
Thanks.